This is a tremendous story, and to tell it right, we need to make it feel like a whisper between friends, authentic, raw, and full of heart. I've taken the framework of your outline and woven in the required depth, conflict, and the conversational, American voiceover style you asked for. I've changed the names to make the content unique. The journalist is now Jake Thorne, the girl is Lily Rylan, her father was Sergeant Marcus Rylan, and the lead dog is Atlas. The main source of initial conflict is a judgmental neighbor and HOA leader, Mrs. Delilah Vance. Here is the full, continuous script, presented in 2 parts. Part 1 of 2. You know, I've seen a lot of things in my 35 years working the news beat, the kind of things that hollow you out, the stuff that makes you cynical about the human spirit, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the daily routine on my quiet little street in Havenwood. I'd moved here, to Willow Creek Lane, specifically to find peace, to let the noise of the city and the trauma of the job finally fade out, until she showed up. Every morning, exactly 7 on the dot, rain or shine, she appeared. A tiny girl, maybe 5, tops, with braids that bounced and a bright pink coat that looked like something out of a princess movie, except for the grime on the cuffs. But the coat wasn't the showstopper, not even close, it was her entourage. 5 massive German shepherds, I mean, absolute units, full-grown, teeth that could crack a bowling ball, walking alongside her like silent, gold-furred destroyers. She held their leashes, all 5 of them, in one tiny, gloved hand, and they moved as one, without a single bark, without even needing a jerk on the leash. They didn't walk, they glided, like a perfectly synchronized, 4-legged military procession. Now, Willow Creek is the kind of place where people notice if your recycling bin is half an inch over the property line. Trust me, I know because I've heard from Mrs. Delilah Vance about it, so you can imagine the fever pitch this girl caused. The whispers started instantly. Who is she? Where are her parents? Are those police dogs? Mrs. Vance, bless her controlling heart, was convinced they were a menace to property values. She'd stand on her porch, clutching a poodle named Fifi, and watch them go by, face screwed up like she'd just bit into a lemon. No one ever got close enough to ask the girl either. Mr. Peterson, who runs the bakery down the block, tried once, a cheerful, "Good morning, sweetheart," and I swear, the 5 shepherds stopped instantly. They didn't growl, they didn't lunge, they just shifted, forming a defensive crescent, and their eyes locked on Peterson with a stare that wasn't aggression, it was a silent, cold-blooded warning. The girl didn't say a word, just tilted her head, gave a soft whistle, and they marched on, leaving Peterson frozen, broom mid-sweep. It was unsettling. It was beautiful. And for a retired journalist, it was pure, irresistible mystery. I started filming her from my second-floor balcony, just a few quick clips, and of course, they went viral. Overnight. The comments section was a beautiful mess, everything from calling her the dog princess to suggesting she was raising a secret canine army. But the real journalists, the ones still in the game, picked up on the real detail. Those dogs weren't just walking, they were guarding. Every few steps, one would check the flank, another would scan the rooftops. When a car rolled too close, their muscles would tense, ready to spring. And the girl, this tiny, fragile thing, never flinched. She had this quiet, almost haunted look in her eyes, like she was carrying a weight too heavy for her whole life, not just her little backpack. That's when I knew this wasn't just a fun human interest story. This was something deeper, something wrong. It felt choreographed, perfect, and perfection usually hides something messy. I started waking up earlier, notebook in hand, coffee long forgotten. I analyzed the footage. The girl's pink coat was always the same, but her shoes were scuffed, worn down, she had clearly walked a lot more than just Willow Creek Lane. And the dogs? Their coats gleamed, but their gait, it carried the discipline of a unit, not the playful bounce of pets. I scribbled a note, these dogs have purpose. What is the mission? One chilly Tuesday, I decided I wasn't getting the answer from my balcony. I had to follow. I waited until she passed the bakery, then pulled my old sedan out, keeping half a block back, my steps light. She and her squad, they marched past the familiar landmarks, then took a sharp, unexpected turn down a narrow, forgotten side street that led right to the edge of Havenwood, where the town just sort of gave up. Old, dilapidated houses, boarded-up windows, grass trying desperately to reclaim the pavement. It was on that street, as they reached the very last house, a wreck with peeling paint and a broken fence, that the dog's whole demeanor changed. Their ears perked, their steps slowed, and the formation tightened, closer than ever to the girl. She whispered something, too soft for me to hear, and I swear, the dogs calmed instantly. When they walked through the broken gate of that forgotten house, the tension melted away. They wagged their tails, not playfully, but softly, deeply, like they were finally, truly home. I crouched behind a gnarled old elm, snapping discreet photos. My old investigative instincts were screaming, this is it. This is the secret. She disappeared inside, but I heard it then, the sound of more barking, muffled, inside the house. More dogs. How in the hell was one little girl managing a whole pack, alone, in a house like that? I turned off my camera, exhaled, and muttered to myself, all right, Lily Rylan. Let's find out who you really are. The next morning, I was back, staking out the house. I watched them leave for their walk at 7 sharp. As soon as they were out of sight, I moved in. The place was worse up close. Muddy windows, a mailbox with no name, and dozens of paw prints pressed into the dirt, the signatures of ghosts, really. I crept around back, stepping carefully through the high weeds. Then I found the shed. It was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled sharp, a mix of medical supplies, dog shampoo, and old canvas. There were torn blankets, a stack of worn-out leashes, and tucked into a dark corner, a large wooden crate. Dust coated the lid, but stenciled across it in faded black letters were 3 words that hit me like a kick to the gut, K, 9-unit property. The hairs stood up on the back of my neck. Mrs. Vance had been right. They were trained K9s. But how had this child, this fragile girl, come to own 5, plus the one still inside? I froze when an older shepherd, gray around the muzzle and clearly limping, emerged from the house, stared at me with ancient, knowing eyes, and retreated, the back door creaking shut. There were injured dogs in there, hiding. I zoomed my phone camera onto the front window again, catching a flicker of a lamp, stainless steel bowls, and what looked like a faded police uniform draped over a chair. I whispered, "Who's taking care of who, kid?" I slipped away, but the low, watchful growl of the unseen dogs followed me from behind the rickety fence. I didn't know it yet, but the curiosity I felt was about to be replaced by a terrifying, desperate need to protect. Because the secret I was uncovering was about to be exposed by the very people who should have been protecting her all along. The whole neighborhood was about to blow up, and Lily Rylan was standing right at the epicenter. The viral videos had done their damage, not by making Lily famous, but by catching the eye of the one person you never want seeing your business, Mrs. Delilah Vance. She hadn't just watched the videos, she had seen her property values flash before her eyes, and she had filed a formal, scorched earth complaint with Animal Control and the Town Council, citing unauthorized, dangerous, and aggressive livestock on Willow Creek property. A week later, the white van marked Havenwood Animal Control and a black and white Town of Havenwood Sheriff's cruiser rolled right up to the Rylan house. I watched from across the street, crouched behind my car, my stomach twisted into a knot. This wasn't going to be a friendly chat. 2 officers stepped out, one with a clipboard, the other, a younger guy, was adjusting a tranquilizer strap on his belt. The sight of that strap made me feel physically ill. The officers approached the broken gate, and instantly, the house exploded with sound, a deep, territorial, thunderous barking. 5 shepherds appeared at the fence, hackles raised, eyes blazing with warning. The older officer, the clipboard guy, shook his head. "That's not a pack, Donnie," he muttered to the younger one. "That's a tactical barrier. They're guarding." But they had a warrant, driven by Vance's relentless complaints about a child operating an illegal kennel, and they weren't turning back. They took a cautious step forward. That was the trigger. Atlas, the largest one, the one I'd named Bravo in my head because of the intensity of his presence, lunged toward the gate, teeth bared. The officers froze. And then, through the chaos, she appeared. Lily Rylan, her pink coat faded, her face pale, but her chin held high, determined. "Stop," she cried. Instantly, all 5 dogs backed away, returning to her side like trained units on a dime. She whispered, "It's okay, boys. They're not here to hurt us." The older officer cleared his throat, trying to sound paternal. "Sweetheart, are your parents home?" Lily shook her head, slow and small. "It's just us." The younger officer, Donnie, looked heartbroken but stuck to the script. "Honey, we've got reports. We need to check the property. You can't keep this many animals alone." Tears welled in her eyes, the first real emotion I'd ever seen from her. "Please don't take them," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They're all I have left." I could see shapes moving behind her, the older, injured dogs peeking from the shadows. The clipboard officer sighed, defeated by the sight. "We'll have to report this, kid. We'll come back tomorrow morning with child services and a vet." As they turned to leave, Atlas growled, a low, guttural warning. Lily knelt beside him, her voice shaking, "Shoo, don't worry, boys. I won't let them take you." I felt the blood drain from my face. Child services, a vet, and a whole lot of paperwork. This was going to destroy her life and scatter the dogs she was clearly devoted to protecting. I knew right then, watching her tiny back against the storm of the world, that I couldn't just write this story anymore. I had to become part of it. But the storm wasn't just figurative. It was literal. That night, Havenwood got swallowed by a biblical deluge. The wind howled through Willow Creek Lane like a screaming banshee, the kind of noise that rattles the foundation of your house and the certainty of your life. I sat by my window, staring out at the downpour, seeing only Lily's face, hearing only her whisper, "They're all I have left." Animal control was due back at 8 sharp, but my gut, that old, reliable, investigative gut, told me the storm would act faster than bureaucracy. Around 7 in the evening, I checked my balcony. The street was empty. No sign of Lily or the dogs. Lightning flashed, illuminating the Ryland house, a grim silhouette fighting the wind. And then I saw it. The broken gate, now wide open, banging wildly in the gale. My stomach dropped like an elevator shaft. I grabbed my thickest jacket, didn't bother with shoes, and ran right out into the deluge. Each step was a fight against the wind, the rain stinging my face like needles. As I got close, I could hear it, faint, desperate barking, muffled by the pounding rain, a sound of pure panic. I reached the porch, kicked the rotting door once, it was locked, kicked it again, harder, and the whole frame gave way with a splintering crack. I stumbled inside, breathing in the smell of damp air, wet fur, and sheer, concentrated fear. My flashlight beam cut through the dark. The place was a mess of torn blankets and puddles pooling on the warped wooden floor. Then, movement. Atlas, the big one, emerged from the shadows, soaked and shaking, his eyes wild. But he wasn't barking at me, he was whining, a pleading, high-pitched sound I'd never heard from a shepherd before. He turned toward the hallway and nudged me forward. It wasn't a warning, it was a plea for help. "Where is she, Atlas?" I whispered. I followed him down the dark hall, my boots splashing. The next flash of lightning lit up the narrow corridor, and there she was, Lily, curled up beside 2 of the older, injured dogs, clutching a flashlight that had long died. Her pink coat was plastered to her, her lips blue. Hey, I'm here, kid," I dropped to my knees, checking her pulse, weak, but steady. Atlas and the others growled, uncertain of my presence, until Atlas gave a sharp, single bark, a signal. They eased back. I stripped off my jacket, wrapping it around her trembling shoulders. "It's okay, Lily. You're safe now." The wind roared, threatening to shatter the windows. I had to get her out. As I lifted her fragile body, my flashlight beam landed on something small, a framed photo lying face down on the wet floor. I flipped it over. A man in a clean police uniform smiled back, standing proudly beside, you guessed it, 5 German Shepherds. His nameplate read, Sergeant Marcus Rylan, K-9 Unit. My breath hitched in my throat. The resemblance, the eyes, she was his daughter. Thunder cracked outside, shaking the walls, but the noise was nothing compared to the shock inside my head. I whispered, "Oh my God, Lily, she's his child." This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. This was the opening scene of a revelation. By the time the storm broke the next morning, Lily was safe, sleeping under a blanket at my place, with Atlas and the other shepherds settled around her like furry, protective area rugs. But I knew I had to go back to the house. At 8 sharp, the sheriff's cruisers and the animal control van rolled up. I stood across the street, pretending to be a gawker, watching the officers batter the door open. They stepped inside cautiously. The younger officer, Donnie, stopped first. "Sir, you need to see this." The house, despite the mess, wasn't a wreck of neglect. It was a makeshift hospital. Cages, clean, lined with blankets, were everywhere. Some were empty, some held older, injured shepherds resting inside, bandaged paws, stitched wounds, fresh water bowls. It wasn't a kennel, it was a sanctuary. The older officer whispered, "Dear Lord. She's been taking care of them." In one corner, a wall of framed photos told the rest of the story, Officer Marcus Rylan, K-9 commendations, and a folded newspaper clipping, local K-9 hero dies in line of duty. The officers fell silent. The truth hit them all at once. This was not neglect. This was a legacy being carried out. This was a promise kept. They lowered their tranquilizers. No one spoke for a long moment until Donnie quietly said, "We can't take them. Not after this." Later that afternoon, after the cops had left a single note taped to the door, under care of temporary guardian until further notice, I brought Lily back. I had to know the full story. I led her to the back of the house, where I'd found the shed, and pointed to the trap door I'd seen earlier. She nodded, her eyes red but calm. I pulled it open, and the narrow staircase descended into the darkness. When my flashlight hit the bottom, the air changed, it felt sacred. The basement wasn't a hiding place, it was a memorial. Walls lined with badges, certificates, photos. And in the center, a large wooden box covered with a folded police flag. On top of it sat the framed picture of Sergeant Rylan. Lily knelt, tracing the inscription carved into the box's lid, "For the ones who never left his side." "He used to take these dogs everywhere," she began, her voice soft and shaky. "When he didn't come back, 2 years ago, they tried to send his boys away. But they kept running, they kept finding me. Until Atlas found me here. This was Daddy's place. He treated injured K9s, trained them, gave them homes. I just kept doing what he started." I looked around the room, the feeding charts, the medical tools. She'd done this all herself. "You did all this by yourself?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "He told me once. Bravery isn't about size, sweetheart. It's about heart. I promised I'd never leave them behind." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't blink them back. "You didn't just keep his promise, Lily," I said, kneeling beside her. "You became it." Now, the story, once a rumor, spread like wildfire. Mrs. Vance, who had tried to weaponize the system against a grieving child, was utterly annihilated by the community she sought to control. Reporters descended again, but this time, the cameras weren't looking for scandal, they were searching for a hero. The town was flooded with donations, blankets, and messages of support. People who had once whispered about the weird girl, now lined up to offer help. The ultimate cinematic moment came a week later at the Havenwood police station, where they held a ceremony not just for Sergeant Rylan, but for his daughter. Lily was dressed neatly, standing beside Atlas, who looked immensely proud. Chief Keller, a man whose face was normally granite, stepped up to the microphone. "Your father," the chief said, his voice rough with emotion, looking directly at Lily, "was the bravest man I ever knew. And now, Lily, everyone knows his daughter carries the very same heart." He pinned a medal, polished gold, engraved with her father's name, to her little chest. Lily looked down at Atlas, tears shimmering, and whispered, "We did it, boys." When she stepped outside, the entire town erupted, police officers saluted, children held up handmade signs, and even Mrs. Vance, standing far away and utterly alone, didn't dare utter a complaint. I stood beside her, watching the crowd, the neighbors, the vets, the officers, all united by her courage. "You've changed them, Lily," I murmured. "Maybe you've changed all of us." As the applause slowly faded, I leaned down to her. "You know, you've got a whole town behind you now. What are you going to do next?" She looked up, her smile shy, but full of quiet strength, the haunted look finally gone. "I'm going to keep helping dogs like them," she said simply. "The ones nobody wants anymore." I chuckled, a real, genuine laugh, the first one I'd had in years. "Then I guess we've got work to do, kid." They walked away, 6 figures, a girl and her 5 protectors, down Willow Creek Lane, the same street where it had all begun. But this time, there were no whispers, no doubts. Just admiration and love following her every step. Because now everyone knew the truth. Lily Rylan wasn't just a child walking her dogs. She was the daughter of a hero, the keeper of a sacred promise, and the heart of every loyal creature who had ever waited for someone to come home. It was a hell of a story, and it taught me one thing: cynicism is easy, but finding real, selfless, world-changing courage in a pink coat, that's what matters.